Now you can repeat that.
Okay. So let's introduce seventh grade ELA teacher, Kim Atkins.
Good morning.
I've seen, most people have been to our PTO sponsored coffee with the principal before, and we usually like to bring a topic that is relevant to what your kids are experiencing, whether it be information about things that we're putting in place in school, or school data, or property, and curriculum. We always think it gives parents a good chance to understand what's happening in the classroom. If we go back about 6 or 7 years ago, we were not being as successful as we thought we should have been in ELA. So we made some changes at that time, and we started seeing some growth right away. Well, we got to the point now where the next thing that needs to be done was to really address more specific things in ELA. And the model that Kim is going to talk about today is how we're doing that. So last year, we went 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade full-blown moving into the workshop model. Our teachers went through training on how to implement workshop and what it looks like at the middle school level. It's what's done in the elementaries right now and was being done. And we were lucky to have Kim come from Green Tree Elementary to middle school with that background, and it really helped us with that transition. So Kim's going to give some background of workshop and take us through a little bit what it looks like.
Yeah,
All right? So,
yeah, and I have a lesson. I'll make it brief.
so what's neat with this, though, and I don't know if you're going to talk data, but across the state of Missouri, school districts saw a decline in their achievement level, while South Middle School did not, which is really good. So
And I
definitely
had-
good
yeah.
stuff. Okay, so.
One of the big things about workshop model is that we engage kids in not only talking but reading about or writing about their reading. And so I felt very fortunate that Mr. Swift, it worked a minute ago.
Pointed at the computer. Maybe. I'll just do that.
You use the right arrow.
I tried it a second ago first, and up there. So,
Maybe stand on that side.
Here's your.
so is it these two?
Go back.
Okay. All right, so like Mr. Swift said, about 2 years ago, we started implementing some workshop practice. And last year, we dove into it fully, all grade levels here at South. And it looks different at every grade level because of the release of responsibility to kids. And most of your kids are probably familiar with the model because they've been doing it elementary for at least the last 7 or 8 years now. It does look different than elementary. We have a 1 hour block, whereas sometimes they have a 2 hour block for literacy. So we compact some things, we put them together. You might have one lesson that's a little bit longer on Monday to prep for the week, and then the rest of the week we have short lessons that go with that. The great thing about workshop, and probably the best thing about it, is that it allows us to differentiate for every kid. It's a natural differentiated instruction type. So I just want to give you some basic components of what workshop might look like. It looks like a lot, and it is a lot, and it's a lot of layering of skills and strategies and instruction and working with kids. So, like the beginning piece here is that, there's a mini lesson. It can be anywhere from 7 minutes to 15 minutes. And sometimes, depending on the content, it might be more than that, but usually that's not the usual. Typically, we're staying somewhere in the 7 to 15 minutes because we know that brain-based research shows that during any type of lecture, you have people for the first 10 minutes, and you have them for the last 10 minutes. So we want to keep it short so that they get what we're trying to get them. We want them to practice it while we're together, and then we want them to try it on their own. So there's the connection piece, which talks about what we did before that connects to this. If it's a new instruction, then it might be connecting to the reason why we're doing it and the purpose. We go into the teaching, that's either reviewing what they've learned and where it applies next. Also, maybe new learning. So like in first quarter, you're going to see a lot of kind of review and pushing that thinking a little bit further for whatever grade level that happens to be. Active engagement is when you practice or they practice, and we're going to do that in a little bit, so I'll be asking you guys to move forward, as I would ask my students to do. And so we'll talk through it. I'll do some with them, they'll do it with a peer, and then they'll do it on their own. And the link is when I look at them, we talk about it, and we say, okay, so this is what we learned. This is how it applies. This is why we learned it. Now I want you to go and try it on your own. Some other pieces of workshop that you might see every day, you might see sometimes, it's mostly dependent on need. Conferencing with students. You will see teachers walking from student to student to student and talking to them about their books, asking them questions or about their writing. The other great thing about this model, I just want to interject here really quick, is that reading and writing are both the same model. And they blend together so seamlessly because we know that the better of a reader you are, the better of a writer you are, and vice versa. Those things go together. We do strategy groups. That might mean that this group of children over here needs context clues, or they need to learn how to jot about their book, or they need some comprehension strategies. So we'll help them with that. Book clubs or partnerships where your kids are reading the same books and having discussions about those. The Read Aloud, we use Read Aloud mentor texts, and we model that with kids, and that's what I'm going to do with you today. And then share and debrief. That's when we come back together at the end, and we talk about what they learned, what they discovered, and how they feel about what they learned. And discussion is a big part of workshop. Kids need to talk about what they've read to be able to really comprehend it. It helps them gather new thinking, build on what they know, and go beyond what they originally thought. So student responsibilities: read, 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 and read. They have to read. Volume is critical for growth. The amount of reading is critical for growth. The research that I'm most familiar with says that kids who read about an hour a day, and that can include the 30 minutes at home, at school, and maybe 30 minutes at home, that hour is minimal to see growth. Just 30 minutes a day, like between both, is going to make them maintain kind of where they are. And so reading every day is really important as much as reading minutes in a week. They need to actively think about what they're reading. So if they're just skimming through it, or they're just picking up pieces, they're missing the foreshadowing, they're missing the inferencing that they can do to see what's coming next, where the characters are going, the bigger plot. There are subplots in a lot of books. And at the middle school level, the text complexity is much higher. So there's a lot more for them to find in their book and to be interacting with, to understand the whole story and what the author is really trying to get them to understand. They need to write about their reading. And writing about their reading can be anything from Post-its to book notes, depending on how the teachers do that. And we all have different ways that we do it. And I actually use a variety of different things in my class. I know a lot of teachers do. So we'll start with sticky notes, and we'll take those and we'll move those to a response in our journal. And we'll move that to arguments so that they can support with evidence. And so it's all getting them to push their thinking even more. And they can't do that if they're not actively reading and they're not writing about that, understanding and paying attention. And then participating in class group and partner discussions. That's the last linking piece. So they've jotted about it, this is what I think, they've talked to a neighbor about it, and they've gotten a new perspective, and so now they put those two things together, and their understanding and comprehension have gone way higher and way deeper. The benefits: reading equals achievement across all boards. Our kids have to read, 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 read. And even in math, they have to read word problems, they have to be able to chunk that text and figure out what it's asking them to do, what's irrelevant, and what do I need to pay attention to. Just Right books, you guys are probably familiar with that terminology, and I'll kind of go through a Just Right book in just a second. This is the single most important thing that your kid can do, that all children can do, to grow as readers. If the text is too hard, it hinders their ability to keep moving and understand the text. They're spending more time spinning their wheels figuring it out. And if it's too easy, they're not really thinking. It's not pushing their thinking. The student choice is a big, big piece of that. Yes, sometimes we ask them to read sci-fi or fantasy, but most of the time they're going to read a book of their choice. And sometimes they have a hard time figuring out what that is, but we always try to help them. And I know Mrs. Schmidt and Mrs. Schock are great about helping with that. And it really does foster independence. The more that they're able to do these things on their own, the more critical thinkers they are, and the more that they can proceed and learn on their own, understand how they learn. And that's a big part of it. So this is what Mr. Smith was talking about a second ago, and you can probably speak a little more to it. We outgrew the state in the Math Proficiency Index, and I think that's pretty amazing. And then I took this quote from the Reading and Writing Project. It's the Lucy Calkins. Many of you probably know who she is. She is the reading and writing guru right now. But it says that research shows that kids need to read a lot of texts with high comprehension in order to move up levels of text complexity. Volume is vigilantly watched during reading workshop. And so the dreaded reading log, that's one of the ways that we have kids actually pay attention to what am I reading? Have I spent a month on this book, or am I moving through this book like I should? Is this book too easy? Is it too hard? Do I need to figure out a new book? And that really is a data piece for them and for us. For teaching. So Just Right books, they're self-selected. The children can read through them with about a 96% proficiency, fluency, and comprehension. That means that if they open it to the middle of the book, this is one strategy I give them. They read through and they find 5, 6 words that they don't know and they can't make comprehension fairly quickly, then I ask them to put that book back. It's a little too difficult. If they open it and there's maybe one word, maybe one topic that they haven't quite figured out, but with a little bit more reading they could get it, then that book might be okay for them to try. They can read it, they can figure out the errors, they can make connections, but we want to make sure that they don't have any misunderstandings in the book, because that prevents them from comprehending the entire plot, the story, and the characters, and all those things that put together our stories. Books that are too easy, don't encourage thinking, I talked about that. And if a book is too difficult, it's laborious, it makes them not want to read, it's boring. So one of the teachers I talked to, she goes, this is something that we learned. And she said, if you take 10 words, just random words from any 100-word passage, you've taken away 10% of the content, almost no matter which words they are. And so you can see how quickly that comprehension level is going to drop because you're going to miss pieces of it. So that was just kind of an idea. So that was the basics of workshop. Do you guys have questions? Yeah.
So, how is this, what are the key differences in what you put in place versus what you did before? Like, it sounds like there's a lot more student discussion.
There is.
What else is substantially different?
I might have to have Mr. Swift talk a little bit more about that, because when I came here, I was already doing workshops, so I brought it with me.
Okay.
You would have seen more direct instruction of telling kids what to do as opposed to kids working in groups and working their way through understanding. And the second piece that you would not have seen, and you guys as parents don't see it, but in me as an observer, I see this. Our ELA teachers are constantly conferencing with students. They know where their kids are at all times. They know if they're struggling, they know if they're getting it too easily, they know if they're being challenged just right. While before, they had a picture of the whole class, but not each individual kid. And they know each individual student at a level way beyond where we were getting before.
Right.
That's a big, big difference in
One
top
thing.
achievement for kids.
One thing that I've learned in my education classes is that the person doing the talking is the person doing the learning.
Mhm.
So if you've got a teacher, telling the kids what to think,
Mhm.
the kids aren't learning anything.
Right.
They're not learning how to think.
I have a question about learning styles. Do you make an effort to help students understand how they learn best
Mhm.
too? Is that just something that's ongoing? Because I actually teach a college class on
Yeah.
studying. And,
Yes.
and so many kids say, I never learned how I learn as an individual. And
Right.
this is about individual learning. So
And this is part of that. We reflect on all the data that we take in. So when my kids come to me and they have booked notes jotted on Post-its, and I talk to them about, well, what were you thinking here? Why do you think you thought that? When we look at reading logs, we take that data and say, okay, so now we have to set some goals. If you know that this is a weakness for you, then let's talk about, what would help you. So we work through, are you that student who needs like note cards to flip through, if you're studying for a test. Do you work better when you can say it and then have it said back to you? Do you work better when you're able to, with vocabulary, I'll do things like, okay, draw a picture of what you think this looks like, then let's talk about what the definition is and how many synonyms can you find that go with this word. those are all pieces that help, I think, hit all of those different things, and I hope help them reflect on what really helps them. It's really hard at 7th grade. They have a very hard time just figuring out how to get through the day, and then asking them to really think about, what are you thinking about that? We have to drag them that way, and usually by mid-year they're pretty good.
Do they cover that in elementary and throughout the years?
As far as studying,
Yeah, I mean, just.
Study
help the
habits.
kids, should they start that early?
Mhm.
And, okay.
I know that we did. I can speak from my own personal experience. I know that we worked really hard to help them understand there are many different ways you can study for something. And I would always tell them, we'll try this, and if this doesn't work, let's try something else, and then let's try something else. And these are the strategies that I know work for me. And I also have them talk to each other. Well, so-and-so did a really great job on this, whatever it happens to be. And I noticed that they use this strategy. Maybe go talk to them about that and see if it'll help you. We do a lot of peer work. If I'm having trouble getting the point across, I'll have a student peer that I know gets it, try also. And so that's part of that discussion piece. So I hope I hit, okay. So we do, we work on study skills. It just looks different with every kid and with every grade level. So, if you guys have a few minutes, I just wanted to walk you through kind of a brief part of a lesson. I am going to ask you to move a little closer to me. You can bring your chairs. We can sit in a big group if you'd like. We're going to actually work on a little bit of annotation, so you'll need a pencil or a pen, maybe something hard to write on if you have a. I'll just stick a few of these down here. Just take one and pass them. Now, what I would do with my children is we would actually come together in a big cluster of a group in the front. It works really nice if you can make a big circle, but it doesn't always work that way.